Welcome to Peachtree Injury Talk with attorney Jordan Jukes.
Hello and welcome to the Peachtree Injury Talk with attorney Jordan Jukes. I'm your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today we are diving into the essentials you need to know about personal injury law in Georgia. Jordan, great to see you again.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
All right, so how common are severe car accidents on Georgia roadways? Have you noticed any trends or increases in these accidents recently?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I would say that there's all different types of car wrecks on the streets in Georgia. But because Georgia, frankly, is an awesome place to live, and Atlanta is a very popular hub, and people, the interstates are very, very widely and broadly used, that people tend to get more and more car wrecks. And just generally speaking, the more populous and dense an area is going to be, the more car wrecks and injuries that are going to be out there. So yeah, the amount of car wrecks in Georgia, unfortunately, right now is not going down. It's heading in the other direction.
Why do you think that's just a population thing? I mean, is it a lack of public transportation, or what do you think is the reason for that?
All the above. Absolutely, lack of public transportation contributes to that. I think one thing that is getting better is the safety of vehicles. And in fact, I hope that continues to trend upwards because, a lot of vehicles now have automatic braking systems and sensors that are really accurate. But unfortunately, some of those still aren't going to overcome people driving distracted with cell phones, which is probably the biggest contributor of it. There's just not much a car can do if you are going too fast. It's just really hard to automatically brake. But technology is getting better, but people still tend to abuse the technology and go faster than they should. And as long as they're not driving safely, there's going to be more wrecks. Yeah,
there's only so much technology can do. It can't change your habits. I mean, obviously, I got to believe that the car accidents you've seen went up exponentially with the advent of the smartphone.
In my opinion, it's hard to prove, but just anecdotally speaking, I would bet that almost every single car wreck is probably caused by someone being on their phone. Just holding it, looking at Instagram or TikTok or whatever. I think you're 100% right. And so the technology that we've been blessed with has also been a curse in some sense because people just can't take their eyes off their phone and they end up getting in car wrecks. That's probably the number one cause of car wrecks these days. Again, it's hard to prove because people always say, I was just flipping the radio, or they never are going to admit they were on their phones. And so it's hard to prove, but that's usually what the cause is.
Well, cell phones, good or bad, topic for another podcast, I think. But,
yeah, right.
I agree with your sentiment. That's for sure. Can you explain the impact of severe injuries, such as traumatic brain injuries and spinal cord injuries that result from car accidents?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And in most car wrecks, believe it or not, there's going to be a less significant injuries. But we have seen people who've had very significant surgical spine injuries from impacts where you could barely see damage to the vehicle. And I think it speaks a little bit to the differences in how our God made our bodies, and people react different to different impacts. But a lot of people, because of the mechanism of a typical car wreck, where one force just sort of hits another force, that sometimes is much slower, much heavier, faster force, it just tends to damage the neck and the low back and leads to herniations in the discs of the spine. And those can never heal sometimes. And there's not many doctors out there that'll say a herniated disc will spontaneously heal. Now, they may become what we call asymptomatic, but they're going to cause a lot of discomfort and pain for a really long time. And so most herniated disc or spine injuries need to be treated not just by a chiropractor, but by an orthopedist or sometimes a neurosurgeon who can go in there looking at the imaging they have, MRIs and CTs, and to be able to go in and make it a good diagnosis and to be able to make some recommendations as to how to fix or make less painful the damage to the spine. And you know this, Kevin, but spine injuries, it's the central nervous system of our body. I mean, the nerves go through there. They control what happens in your head, your arms, your legs, and everything in between. And so a lot of root pain problems can be, even in your fingers, can be brought back to the spine. And so sometimes surgery is the only option, although it's never one that I tell my clients to go do. That's always a personal decision they need to make with their families. But yeah, I mean, those permanent injuries from even a seemingly small impact can really have devastating life consequences on folks. And It's sometimes the small things in their life that gets changed. I don't sleep the same. I can't wake up without a pinch in my back, or, I used to go on long walks with my husband or my wife, and I just don't enjoy those anymore because, my hips don't feel right, my back. So it's not sometimes disabling, decapitating pain. It's just that my life is not as comfortable as it used to be. And sometimes people have surgery for that reason.
Yeah. And anybody who follows sports, I mean, how many football players way later in life have just severe issues because their back is so jacked up from being hit so many times. And
you don't have to look further than our backyard here. I'm in Tyrone, and one of the most famous football players, Calvin Johnson, from around here.
I remember Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, he went to Sandy Creek, which is a stone throw from my Sandy Creek High School, which is a stone throw from my office. And then, of course, he went to Georgia Tech. He was an excellent receiver. He played his entire career with the Detroit Lions, and then not long after he signed a new contract, he retired because of health issues with his back and et cetera. And so, we talk about, you just lived through the pain, and that's not a big deal. Yet we have, to your point, a lot of examples of professional millionaire athletes who walked away from piles of cash to say, hey, it's not worth the additional pain or discomfort that I'm receiving.
And they are in way better shape than I am, or you are. So, I mean, if it's happening to them,
you hope so. Yeah, absolutely. But it just goes to show that your body's a fragile thing. And yes, they get beat up. There's no question. But they've designed and worked out to be able to withstand that. But those of us who don't have professional bodies, we're more susceptible, in my opinion, to less impact.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I feel like back and neck injuries, we all know about those when it comes to car wrecks. What about traumatic brain injuries? Like how often do you see that as a result from a car wreck?
More and more often, because we're getting better at recognizing the symptoms for it, and the medicine is getting better, and the diagnostics are getting better. But there's some really interesting research that's come out, and it's been out there, but certainly in the last 10 years, it's been repeated and shown that what we call traumatic brain injuries, or TBIs, are really what they call minor or mild traumatic brain injuries, are very common, especially in injuries that we typically refer to as whiplash type injuries. And so a TBI is really just an insult to the brain or damage to the brain. And it doesn't need to be, a piece of the brain falls off. That actually is not what happens. It's just a hard impact that kind of leaves a bruise or some type of bruising sensation to the tissue of the brain. But what happens is, and that can happen because your brain is really floating in your skull, right? And it's not, yes, it's snug in there, but when you have something as bad as a bad whiplash, or sometimes you hit your head on the window of your car or on the steering wheel, it insults or damages that brain, and it can significantly change your lifestyle and really your relationships with others. And that's your relationship with others, and when there's a suspected TBI, is one of the golden. That's probably not the best word to use, but one of the easiest ways to really diagnose a TBI, because your loved ones will say, Kevin isn't the same anymore. He misses appointments. He doesn't laugh at the same jokes. He doesn't make the same jokes. He's late all the time. His memory is bad. He's moody. He's reclusive. Those types of things, which you probably can't self-diagnose, or at least not very accurately, are just classic signs of a TBI, in addition to headaches and fogginess and those types of things. So, and most people, when they're pressed, when you say, hey, look, are you feeling okay after your wreck? A lot of people, if they're really honest with themselves, will say, no, I don't remember things the right way. My head hurts more. I don't sleep the same. And I'm getting written up at work, right, for not being able to calculate numbers that I did in my head before.
Right.
So TBIs are really important. They are often permanent, and they just form an important part of diagnosing someone's injuries and really their damage and settlement value on a case.
What are some common tactics that insurance companies use to try to minimize payouts, and how can individuals protect themselves against these tactics?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most common tactics that an insurance company will utilize is to offer a quick settlement. And I promise you, one of the last things that the insurance company wants you to do is to talk to an attorney, because a good attorney is going to educate you on what to expect and how the process will go and what your options are, and a good attorney will refer to the client or defer to the client on what they choose and what they want to do. But the insurance companies, if you pay attention, they're never telling you, hey, here's the different things, and we want you to go get more treatment. We want you to get better. They don't have that conversation with you. They say, look, we're sorry we did this. Here's $1,000. And then we're going to give you sort of an additional medical benefit of $5,000 to get $5,000 of medical treatment, and just hand us those receipts. And so, again, one of the most commonly used tactics is to sort of push a quick settlement on the victim and hopes that they take it and sign the release. And that just lets the insurance company off the hook.
How often do people take that, would you say?
Way too often.
Way too often. Yeah.
And Georgia's tough because a lot of the insurance companies, a lot of the laws have been such that if someone signs that release and actually accepts the money comes into their bank account and they accept it. If they've signed that release, sometimes it can be really tough to get around that. We've had some success doing it. But it's just, to me, it's common sense, Kevin, that if the insurance company is putting some money, on the table and asking you to sign a legal document, you got to talk to an attorney about that. And there's certainly cases out there where we've told our clients or potential clients, people have called us and said, you really don't need an attorney. You're not bad injured. What the insurance company is offering you is fair considering your injuries. We won't charge you anything. But for the vast majority of them, the insurance company is trying to take advantage of an innocent victim who probably doesn't fully realize how bad they may be injured.
How crucial is it to seek immediate medical treatment after a car accident, even if it seems minor at first?
Every case is different, first of all. And Kevin, if you get in a wreck and my assistant at work's getting a wreck, you may have completely different symptoms. But legally speaking, right, from the attorney's perspective, it's vital to go get immediate treatment. And it doesn't have to be, the emergency department at Emory or some big hospital. It can just be the urgent care or maybe even a chiropractor. Just go in and say, I got in a wreck, just want to get checked out. So if you're not feeling well, my advice, let me say this, let me be a little clear on that. If you're not feeling like you're really injured, my advice would still be to go and get checked out, because often a lot of injuries, particularly spinal injuries, don't manifest for 24 to 48 hours and sometimes even longer. And so it may be easy to dismiss that, but to at least go in and to document, look, I was in a wreck, I was rear-ended, I think I'm okay, but I do have some stiffness. Have them do an x-ray, have them at least write the report, maybe give you some muscle relaxer, because very often you wake up the next morning pretty stiff. But yeah, that for the legal side of it is very, very critical.
How do people deal with medical treatment and getting their vehicle repaired as they go through the personal injury and recovery process?
Yeah, that's a great question, and frankly, one that we could talk all night, about. But there's really two claims whenever you get in a wreck, and the first one is always first or second, doesn't really matter, but one of them is always going to be the vehicle claim. The other one's always going to be the bodily claim. The purpose of each is actually the same, to get your vehicle back to where it was and to get your body back to where it was. Unfortunately, our bodies aren't the same as vehicles. That's a good thing. But and they're also much more complex. Vehicles can either be repaired or deemed a total loss. So a lot of people will call us and say, Jordan, I'm frustrated. I didn't do anything wrong, and now my favorite car is damaged, and it's never going to be the same. Or heaven forbid, it's been totaled. Your options there are usually to work with the other driver's insurance to either make it deemed a total loss or to have it repaired. But in the meantime, you can get a rental vehicle. And there's a lot we could talk about there. If you have to come out of pocket, sometimes you need to do that. But generally speaking, either your insurance or their driver's insurance will have rental coverage that will allow you to go get another vehicle to just be a stopgap. And then similar on the bodily injury side, you do what the doctors tell you to do so that your body can get back to where it was. There's really, in most cases, you really want to do whatever the doctor tells you to do to get better. And I tell this to my clients all the time. The really tough things that we see is when someone signs that release and they're not better. The money I can get you is going to help somehow in some way, but I can't put your body back together. And so once you settle that claim, if your body isn't better, I don't think it's a great settlement, no matter how much money you get, because I don't want my clients being injured for the rest of their life without getting the medical treatment they need. So getting your body back to where it is and getting your car back to where it was, or getting a new car, that's really part of the basic, two major important parts of any injury or car wreck claim.
So kind of continuing on with that, in situations where the at-fault driver has little or perhaps no insurance, can the victim even recover financially? How does that work?
Yeah, and we've had a lot of tough conversations with our clients about this. And so the short answer is yes, usually. But the way to prevent that is always going to be to insure yourself with what's called uninsured motorist coverage.
Right.
Really, really important. And in Georgia, it's easy, and in my opinion, it's the cheapest insurance you can buy dollar for dollar. Uninsured motorist coverage is simply the coverage that you purchase to avoid that exact situation. The law in Georgia is that you only have to have $25,000 of liability coverage, or coverage to cover your bad driving or if you cause a wreck. But in the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot of money. And even worse, it's really not. If you have a neck injury or a significant injury, $25,000 isn't going to go anywhere.
Nope.
But the sad reality is there's a lot of uninsured drivers on the road in Georgia. And so the really only surefire way to combat that is to buy your own uninsured motorist coverage and talk to your broker, your agent, or your insurance company about that. I always tell people a good rule of thumb is to purchase uninsured motorist coverage equal to the amount of liability coverage. So if you want to be covered for $100,000 in case you hit someone, which is a good round number, I would also purchase $100,000 of uninsured motorist coverage, which will make your premium maybe a little more pricey, but it's going to be worth it. Totally.
It's certainly not $100,000 you're paying for it.
No. I mean, it's usually about a quarter on top of every dollar that you spend for liability coverage. Spend another quarter to get another bit of uninsured motorist coverage.
What advice would you give to someone who has just been involved in a car accident, regarding their legal and insurance steps? What should they do?
Yeah, great question, Kevin. I mean, if someone gets in a car wreck, the most important thing to do is to call 911 and to get medical treatment for whatever injuries you have. And hopefully they're not significant. But the next thing you can do is document what happened at the scene. And the best thing to do is just, pull out your camera and take some photos of the damage to the vehicles. Pay attention to what the other driver says. Don't admit fault. Even if the other driver is trying to get you to do it, don't say, hey, this is all my fault, I'm sorry. And then allow the police officer or the responding law enforcement officer to do their job and to conduct a full investigation, and then get the medical treatment they need. You do need to report the car wreck to your own insurance company. And then, of course, contact a personal injury attorney that you know and trust, that's going to be thorough with their investigation, that's going to work with the police officers, that knows good doctors, that can help you get the best treatment you need. That's what I would do is make sure you get the medical care you need, work with the police, and then talk to a good attorney.
Great advice. Well, thanks for tuning in to the Peachtree Injury Talk with attorney Jordan Jukes. For more information or to connect with Jordan, you can visit jukesfirm.com. That's JEWKES firm.com. And of course, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments. Hey, Jordan, always great to talk to you. Thanks again for being here.
Likewise. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.